Brandon Benefield, Gerard Bonner, and Diana Michelle.
What's going on, everybody? It's that time of the week. It's Friday. You know what that means. It's time for your favorite podcast, the SHW podcast. This is our wrestling. I'm B-Double Brandon Benefield alongside the great GB Gerard Bonner and the beautiful Diana Michelle. We are V3, and we are back once again bringing you the official podcast of Southern Honor Wrestling. And GB with the hand. Are we backwards because on the camera?
I don't know which way it is.
Yeah.
You know.
Close enough, but they get it. The fans get it. V3, you know us.
Hashtag.
No.
I'll do the hashtag. Y'all can do the V3 part.
Yeah, hashtag V3. Well, we do have a very special guest coming up here on this week's episode. But before we get into all that, I got to check in with my peeps here. How's everybody's weeks going? Everybody doing good? What's going on?
It's going to be a busy time. I don't even have days off. Do you guys have weekends off? I don't even have weekends off from now until like the end of summer. And
I was gonna say this is the summer of V3. We are going to be
everywhere,
here, there, and everywhere this summer, and that's actually very exciting. I think that's why I felt the way I felt last week. And I reiterate, it's fun watching this. You know, it's fun. I remember, and it's been well documented on several documentary spaces. Kevin Hash and Scott Hall, they would always say, you know, you could make friends or you could make money. They're like, we already got friends, we'll make money. And they talk about how cutthroat pro wrestling can be. But I think we have been very, very blessed to be able to connect in the way that we have so authentically, and to watch us really do the work and see other people recognize it. And it's really amazing to see. So to see our summer as busy as it is quite amazing. And so shout out to what you guys are doing, you know, individually or together. The three of us are really getting some things done. And so,
I mean, and what's crazy is we don't even have a July show for Southern Honor, and we're
what's crazy.
So busy.
That is what's crazy. So if you guys in the Southern Honor world want to see us and you don't want to wait until August, just follow us and you can figure out how to do that.
Yeah, you know where we're at on the socials, so just follow along and we might see you other spaces. But of course, Southern Honor, the big 6th annual Rumble Jack will be here before you know it. It'll be August 9th, and we can't wait for that. And I know just as we're busy, I know everybody else is busy, all the fans watching. The kids are out of school. You know, you're going on trips, going to the beach, all that good stuff. So I know y'all are having fun.
But that's what I hate right now. I just don't have time to go to the beach.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there may be times where we're busy, and whether we're there or working or whatever, and we may have to skip a couple episodes of this, but that's all right, because we got, you know, a lot of time to fill before August gets here. But we're going to try to bring you, it's going to fly by, and we will try our best to bring you some good quality episodes between now and the Rumble Jack. And of course, as you know, as we get closer to the Rumble Jack, we'll have a lot more announcements of people that have entered the Rumble Jack. We already know of a few that won their qualifying matches at the last show. And so, we'll be previewing the Rumble Jack as it gets a little closer. But in the meantime, we're here. We're having fun, and there's somebody coming up, GB, that
there certainly is. I mean, you mentioned the Rumble. Yeah, you mentioned the Rumble Jack. We found out at our last show, some people started declaring that they would enter the Rumble Jack. Other people had to have qualifying matches. But our guest today told us all, after a very intriguing match that he had against Rob Killjoy a couple of months ago. He said at our last show, he's changing his ways. He looked as the man in the mirror. He felt like Michael Jackson and said, you know what? I'm coming back, a different guy, true to myself, and you will see me in the Rumble Jack. We are super excited to welcome Darian Bengston to the podcast, and the conversation goes like this.
Well, we are joined by our special guest this week, Darian Bengston. Darian, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. How are you all?
We are very excited to see you, man. Doing great. And of course, just yesterday, we re-aired the promo on social media about you joining us for the Rumble Jack. Of course, that promo aired at the last show, SHW 63. So we're excited about that. Excited to have you back. And man, just excited to have you here on the podcast with us.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. I'm very thankful for that. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to clear the air on a lot of things as far as my participation in Southern Honor.
You're such a good dude.
Yeah, you
You're such
you
a good
are.
You really are. Because a lot of people would have been like, whatever. I did what I did. So what? You're such a good dude.
I mean, maybe I wouldn't have if I won. Maybe I had to be
This
maybe I
is
had to be
true.
humbled by the loss to
Well,
Well, I don't know if it
apologize.
was a loss because anytime you have an amazing match like you and Rob had, I wouldn't count it as a loss. Maybe in a win-loss column, but that was an amazing match.
Thank you.
Really.
I mean, I learned a lot, right? So I don't think it's ever a loss when you learn a lot. And I think I learned tons because Rob is someone who's so knowledgeable and seasoned. And to be able, that was the first time we've ever even touched. So
wow.
very thankful for that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's
And of course,
fair.
if some of these fans that are watching may not have been aware or weren't at SHW 62 a couple of shows ago, that's when Darian, we kind of said you re-debuted at SHW because we hadn't seen you in a couple years there. And of course, the three of us have seen you in other spaces. You know, we've seen you kind of do a lot of stuff with the Nightmare Factory as well over the last couple years. And so we're excited that you're back, and the SHW audience, the faithful, get to see you live and in person. So we're excited to have you back.
It's been really cool to be back. It's been this really weird roundabout thing, and I talked about it in the promo where it's like this is the 4th year of my career, and I've lived in Atlanta for almost 3 years now, and it's like I had to go everywhere else to find a foothold here, and
Crazy.
yeah, and I tell you what, I don't mind not having to travel like 8 hours to go wrestle.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. But also just to, I don't know, not like victory lap, but it's very cool to be able to like feel appreciated here when I had to do so much to get that elsewhere, you know?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because, I think fans don't necessarily understand a wrestler's road to Southern Honor, right? Because I know internally we know that Southern Honor, a lot of people really want to get there, but I think sometimes people think that that is just company hype, But talk about what it was like for your journey. I mean, living in Atlanta, but really finally just getting in front of that Southern Honor crowd. What is that journey like for you?
It's been really crazy, and at a lot of times it was something that was like made me really low on myself because it was one of those things where it was like I'm the only one of my peers that is not able to just work in town.
Wow.
I was like, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not like putting more, it was snowing both ways uphill type thing to like make it seem crazier than it was. Like I was doing Kansas City was my most reoccurring booking. Kansas City is 12 hours away by car. So I was doing 24-hour round trips to go wrestle for 5 minutes and get my head knocked off. You know what I mean? And then drive all the way home to go work my opening shift in Atlanta. Like it was, I was doing that kind of thing to myself for like 2 years. I put like 100,000 miles in my car in a year. Like I was really out here like on no sleep, just absolutely, just ruining myself to be able to have the opportunity to work. And it's one of those things where, in hindsight, being more accomplished and understanding more sides of the wrestling industry, like it's not just something to be in town and be available. Like there has to be a reason to want to bring you in. Sometimes there just isn't a spot for you, and it's not anything personal. It's just an availability thing, and also like you want to be loyal to the people that you have at the time. So it's like sometimes things just you can't force everything, and sometimes like your chemistry isn't right at that time. And I think coming from England as well, people didn't understand the way that I wrestled or the type of wrestler that I was. And it's taken a year of finding myself and really defining who I am and my wrestling style. But also I've been, not to talk about other companies, but I've been the champion of TWE Chattanooga for over a calendar year now.
Wow.
And, they run shows twice a month. So having twice a month to work in front of a Southern crowd and understand Southern wrestling, and that has been like a huge overcoming a skill gap for me over the past year, and is something that I think I am a much better product and wrestler now than if I would have been in Southern Honor when I was first getting in and I was really hungry for bookings. So in a weird roundabout way, it's made me a better wrestler than maybe if I had gotten opportunities earlier on. But it's also something that like, yo, I was having a struggle for a minute, you know?
Sure, sure.
So it's just cool to finally be here and to be amongst my peers, and to be able to share and create with them.
This is interesting to me for a lot of reasons, and I kind of have to remember where I am because there's a whole set of questions that's in my head. But I want to ask this, and this actually probably will apply more so, I guess, to the wrestlers who are watching this podcast versus the fans who are watching this podcast, and that is this: how important is it to be able to learn and master varying styles of wrestling? I'll use a music analogy while you think of this. I do work in the music industry, and I end up telling people who want to submit music, okay, make sure you understand the format of the radio station you're submitting to. Because if you do country music and you're submitting to an R&B station, the possibility is pretty high that they're not going to play your music. And I don't think most people think that wrestling is different regionally, but clearly it is. So how important is it to learn multiple skill sets based on regions at this point?
So there's two schools of thought about it. One was given to me by Mouse, which is Billy Stark's dad, if you're familiar with Billy. Mouse said to me once, he was like, everyone so desperately wants to earn the title of a Swiss Army knife, to be someone that has so many different utilities. But he goes, in reality, how many people use Swiss Army knives on the day to day? I would much rather use the specific tool that is good for this job. And I think I never thought about it that way because I always thought part of mastery was knowing everything. But in reality, mastery has way more to do with being a specialist. It is way more often you are going to want a master of a specific trade versus a jack of all trades and a master of none. That being said, I think the counter to that as a wrestler is, I think you should become a specialist in 1 to 2 styles, but learn how to make that applicable for your opponent. A great example of that is Adam Priest. Adam Priest is like the premier Southern wrestler in the scene, I think, right now. And they call him any style. It's not because he can be a luchador and can be this and can be that. It's because he can make his adapt to whatever opponent he touches.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the value is. Gresham is very big on that too. Like, so important to have a style because you have to be able to define yourself. You have to be a product that can be easily digestible to a person. And if you kind of do everything, how do you make that bite-sized for someone? How do you make yourself palatable? So our jobs as wrestlers is to find out what is the bite-sized portion of all of the wealth of knowledge and different things that we know. So super long-winded, but
no. It's great. That's great.
That's kind of what I think. And I think for a long time I was someone who was good at everything. And like, so you know what I mean? Like, but once, and Dylan Hales of TWE and of IWTV was the person who really helped me channel and funnel and be like, well, hey, you being able to be a high flyer is great, but are you going to want to be as crazy and consistent of a high flyer as all of these other guys? Like, do you have to have the best 450, the best shooting star, the best all of these things, like in a market that's very oversaturated with that? Or can you tap into this thing that is specific and unique and authentic about me, which is my British training and background and experience? Something that isn't as touched upon, and really, really expand upon that and make that your lane. If I had to compare someone else in the scene, Carly, a lot of people were very work rate obsessed, but in a different way than the way that Carly is. Carly was about marrying the persona to the in-ring work, which is what we all should strive for. But I think he was the first one on the scene to really find out what that balance was for himself.
Hmm.
Or at least the first one to do it in a while of his kind of like generation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. And I've just been able to become a specialist and become masterful of something that has now made me set apart.
Gotcha. Well, you
Good
know,
answer. Good answer.
and don't worry about being long-winded, man. We'd rather
Okay.
you have something
Yeah.
to say than give a
Yeah.
yes or no answer. So
Okay.
Right.
please
Don't make us
elaborate,
work for
expound,
it.
expound on
Okay.
stuff. Yeah. But I was gonna say, now you mentioned your British training over there in
Mhm.
England, and again, as I talked about at the beginning here, the three of us have seen you in other spaces. You know, we've seen where you've trained here locally, and we've got to call a lot of your stuff. So we've gotten to know you over the last couple of years. A lot of these fans in Southern Honor, you know, they saw you a couple of years ago when you came in for one match, and then again, like I said, we re-debuted, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
at SHW 62. So a lot of the fans may not be as familiar with you as we are. So maybe touch a little bit on your training in England, how that came about, where else you've trained within the US, and how long, like when did you start? When did this whole journey start for you?
So it's super crazy. So my wrestling journey starts, well, my first match was, I want to say like November 1st of 2019. It's
Wow, really?
somewhere,
I thought
yeah,
for some reason I was thinking you went way back. I didn't realize it was that
no,
recent. I mean, that's
Wow.
only, yeah, well, I mean, 5 years at this point, but
Yeah.
still, it seems a lot more recent than I expected.
yeah, and it's one of those weird things as well where had my first match like November of 2019, but then the world shuts down in
Right.
March
Oh,
of
Mhm.
2020.
wow.
So I think I wrestled like 4 matches. The world shuts down, and then I don't wrestle again for a year, for a calendar year.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's like, am I even 4 years in at this point? Am I closer to like 3 years technically? But like
Mhm.
eventually that stuff starts to not matter. And wrestling is definitely more of a qualitative than a quantitative thing as far as experience goes. But yeah, so I mean it's pretty recent for me. I had literally just finished grad school. Um, I have a master's degree in classical acting from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama,
Oh,
which is
wow.
part of the University of London, and high emphasis in things like Shakespeare and Chekhov. And
Wow.
the short version of the story is I was doing this play in London, and my director was a dame of the British Empire, founding member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, all that stuff, whatever. And during a rehearsal one day, she cut all my hair off. I had my hair up in like a ponytail like this, and she came up behind me with a pair of scissors and like yoinked my whole joint off, right? And it was a very weird thing, and I was very like freaked out about it, but I was like more like stunned to it until I heard my mom cry over the phone when I
Oh,
told her the
no.
story, right? And that's
Oh,
when I was just like, it all kind of like really hit me and settled in with me. And I was really upset, and I like, just had to get away. And there was a woman who worked on the show. She was doing the lights and sound. She was like, "I'm really sorry that happened to you. If you wanted to get your mind off of it, I do lights and sound for a wrestling show in East London. Like, you should definitely come through sometime." And I was like, "Oh yeah, whatever." But I was signed to an agency at this point, and they knew about my situation, and they're like, "Hey, we also do a lot of sports modeling. So if you ever want to do some sports modeling, let us know like what sports you're into, and we can definitely uh, put you something in that direction." And at the time, I was really Kofi Mania was happening, or it just happened,
Okay.
and that like really like lit a fire in me as a creative. And uh, they were like, I was like, "Oh, I could do this wrestling thing," and they're like, "Oh, actually, we have a wrestler on our books. You should definitely do that." I had no idea at the time, but the wrestler on their books was Anthony Ogogo. He and I were signed
huh?
to the same agency.
Wow.
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 So I turn up for my first ever wrestling lesson, and it's Ogogo and Will Ospreay at the London School of Lucha Libre.
Wow.
And my head trainers there, Greg Burge and Gary Vanderhorn. And there were some other people, some of which have been on Southern Honor. Heidi Katrina
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
trained at my school,
Wow.
and some others. And when I was over there, I had met like Darius Lockhart and Shug D and some other guys from the States. the first thing I ever did in wrestling, I was a week into it. And I'd met Darius because he was doing a tour and had stopped into the school, and he had messaged me and he was like, hey, I don't know if you're available, but Ring of Honor is looking for people to help out. And I'm a weekend and I'm like, I'm like, crazy opportunity. Definitely not ready for it, but I was like, I'll say yes and hopefully, you know, whatever. And I ended up carrying the flag for Shane Taylor that night. He defended
Wow.
the Ring of Honor television title against Joe Hendry in York Hall. And
Crazy.
so nuts. So that's the very first thing I ever did in wrestling.
That's
Wow.
nuts.
And when AEW was in Atlanta last, I carried the flag for Shane Taylor.
I noticed
And-
that.
Right? And
Yes.
Anthony Ogogo is now in that group.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So yeah,
Wow.
it's a very, very crazy full circle thing. But yeah, that's where my wrestling journey starts. I started in London School of Lucha Libre. Got to train my head trainers, like I said, Gary and Greg, but I also got to train with Osprey. First wrestler I ever met was Aaliyah James. Nina Samuels was one of my coaches. Cara Noir was one of my coaches.
Wow.
And I got to have some really crazy exposure in my short time there. My first official, I think, singles match was against Callum Newman, who's in New Japan right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID happens. They shut down the U.S. embassy, and they're like, "You got to move back to America."
Wow.
And I was like I was convinced I was going to live in England for the rest of my life. London was home. And now, after being away for 6 years, I find myself having to move back to America. I didn't know what I was going to do. And Agogo hit me up and he was like, hey, I'm moving to America because I've signed this deal with AEW. I don't know anyone here, but I'm moving to Atlanta. And if you would like to come, I'd love to, you know, for us to kind of do it together.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, absolutely. We moved here. And as he was in AEW, he was training at the Nightmare Factory and invited me to come along with him. And there I got to train with QT primarily. I never got to do the camp system there. But I got to train with QT, and he is like insanely influential on me as a wrestler in the way that I think and develop and go about wrestling. So yeah, Greg Burridge, QT Marshall are two of the like foundational roots of who I am as a wrestler, and are the top two people I would consider my trainer. The third, however, is I got to do a summer training with Dave Taylor
Wow.
of World of Sport, WCW, WWE fame. And although at the time I understood that it was really amazing, it was before I had decided to take the pivot to be a British style wrestler, like as full on as I am now.
Yeah.
And I don't think I understood at the time the importance and significance of being able to learn British World of Sport style wrestling from someone who was actually in the promotion.
Yeah.
You know, World of Sport basically by the end of the 70s, early 80s is gone completely.
Right.
So there won't be many more people after me who will get that opportunity either. And so I really, really am thankful and cherish that. And Dave completely brought me to the next level in terms of style, the mastery. Like that's who I can like that was my grad school for British wrestling, was getting to train with Dave. And you know, from there, getting to take these elements, London School, Lucha Libre, Nightmare Factory, Dave, and create kind of my own style out of it, which is where I am today.
That's wild. That is so wild.
Yeah.
And what's cool about this, I love having you on here. And anytime we have a guest on, it's like, again, like I said, the fans are getting to know a new side of you. And here I am thinking, well, the three of us know you pretty well, and we're learning all
No, we
this new
didn't know
stuff.
nothing.
I'm like, man, this is great. Anyway,
Right.
so cool. Very cool. What a story, man.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
it's very nuts. It's very all over the place. I live a very goofy life. Most of the stuff sounds super fake, but it's not. I was thinking
You're in pro wrestling, so it's going to be goofy regardless of, it's pro wrestling. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I know.
It sounds like the stars just aligned for you, just be in the paths and in the presence of great influential people. It's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that respect. I've like I was saying before, the qualitative versus quantitative thing. I've been put around a lot of quality people, and that's made all the difference in who I am.
It's so interesting. I've said this before, but this kind of really reiterates this thought. There's been something in the water, for lack of a better term, for those who have just entered the wrestling game, I'd say in the last 3 to 4 years, 5 years tops. They're of a different breed,
Mhm.
and I don't know if some of that is because COVID created some opportunities for people, or if, people are just learning and applying faster. What do you think it is that makes people like you and, you mentioned Carly and a number of others who are in those 3 to 4 year block, what has made their road so different than those who we've heard? You hear the stories of old wrestlers who, it took me 10 years before I got on TV. It took me, this amount of time before I met this one and that one. And what you've been able to do, your style, nobody knew that you had been only in this for 3 years. What has made you guys so different?
So this isn't of my own invention, the idea of this, but it was Chris Hero actually um held a seminar, and he was saying us kind of like COVID baby sounds weird, but like, like the kind of pandemic era wrestlers,
Yeah.
people like me who within my first 10 matches was AEW. Like,
Amazing.
I think I wrestled Powerhouse Hobbs like for my 9th match ever or something, and people like Harley, who it's like we were on platforms that were way probably too big for us at the time, and things like that. But Hero said, and it speaks a lot to the state of the indies in general right now, and a huge leg up that I think the South has over every other kind of region in wrestling, which is the independent gold rush of NXT and AEW. What it's effectively done is it has taken all of the veterans off the table. Not obviously 100% of them, but
Yeah.
for every other wrestler growing up in the generations before ours, there were people on your show that have been wrestling for 15, 20, 25 years. Most shows that I am on, I am seen as the veteran at 4 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And because of that, it also means that there's less mentors on the scene. And not that I haven't had mentors or people who have looked out for me, but it means that a lot of us have had to figure it out literally on our own.
Yeah, kind of grow up quicker, grow up quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there are so many wrestlers who have been wrestling longer than me, are on TV or do whatever, that like look to me as like a resource. And that's, insane, but like I am knowledgeable of the things. But it's, I think anyone else who would think to call themselves like a trainer or a veteran would laugh at the idea of me teaching anyone anything or being any, because I've only been in it 4 years. What could I possibly know? And I think a lot of the things that I do get come from, my master's degree in drama. I understand angles. I understand like seeing things, showing things, misdirection. I understand like a lot of the intangible things about wrestling from a career completely outside of it. But so that's kind of what it is. I think it's put a lot of us in a state where like we have to figure it out. We have no other choice. We have no other opportunity. But also it means that we kind of have to figure out what is good for ourselves, because all of the people who were there to be tastemakers and teach us right from wrong aren't around. So we're literally having to figure out like what's over, what's effective, what's good, what's this, what's not, for the most part on our own. And that's really daunting, but the South has people. Tank is such an unbelievably invaluable wrestler to have at anyone's disposal in the Southeast. Like a genuine 20+ year vet, one of the smartest people I've ever met in wrestling, because he's the bloodbath behemoth and stuff. I think people just Tank, whatever. Tank is one of the best wrestlers in the Southeast, and I don't care who has a problem with it, okay?
Wow.
But, he's not the only one. Derek Neal, Shug D, Murder One is a vet. Like there are so many, Todd Sexton, there are so many people who have been around and are still active within the community that other scenes do not have the luxury of having. Whether that's because Southern wrestling is seen as a different kind of thing as the others, whatever it is. But yeah, I think that's a huge reason for why this crop is different, because like some of us who don't have the keys to the intangibles and the understanding of it have to be freak athletes because they know that that is at least getting a reaction.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what's created the kind of current landscape we're in as far as wrestling goes.
That's wild. And you know, I always look at Southern Honor's locker room, and you kind of already touched on it, but I mean, we have guys like Sal Renaro, Kyle Matthews, Judias, you know, I mean, a
Joe
lot of these
Black.
guys, Murder One, yeah, Joe Black, a lot of these guys that have been around a long time. And but we also have that mix of the newer crop, you know, of the young up and comers. And so it's just such a good melting pot of talent that I think is why we stand, I'll say, head and shoulders above the competition.
When like to give them their flowers, because I am adopted by the Southern scene, right? Like I am not inherently a Southern wrestler, but have become one by living here, by proxy, and the fact that the majority of my career is taking place in the South. But you have people like Jaden Newman, with the fingerprints of a Kyle Matthews are all over. Because although he might not have the attention or the credit or the flowers on a national, international level, Kyle Matthews is one of the most influential wrestlers of the past decade in independent wrestling.
Yeah.
Period. No questions asked. Sal Renaro, on resume alone, certified independent legend. And that's not even speaking to just their actual quality, their subjective quality, but like on terms of the absolute concrete things of those, people like Sal, people like Kyle are leagues above and are so under recognized for their contributions to the industry and the fact that they're still around giving and helping out and things like that. So I have a tremendous amount of respect and pedestal placing for all of them.
Yeah. And that's why, fans, if you're watching this and you've never been to one of our shows, you've got to come to a Southern Honor Wrestling show. I mean, that's the quality of talent you're going to get at our shows. And those longtime fans that are watching us, you know this. I mean, you've been coming to the shows, you get it. And I know these fans are super excited to see you, Darian Bengston, returning at the Rumble Jack in August, on August 9th. And of course, talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on the Rumble Jack. We talked about the promo that you put out and what your intentions are, but how are you feeling going into this, being like the first time you're entering the Rumble Jack, this 30, sometimes 30 plus competitor competition here, over the top rope match? It's going to be insane. It's always one of our biggest shows of the year. The winner gets a shot at the Southern Honor Championship. I mean, where's your head at in all this? How you feeling about it?
I'm excited. I mean, Rumblejack has always, whether you're a Southern Honor fan or not, if you are a wrestling fan in the South, you know of the Rumblejack. It is one of those things where it is so unique and it is so big spectacle that everyone knows that it has their own opinions on it. I was in the crowd for last year's Rumblejack, and my feelings are, I think I'm okay as long as David Young isn't there giving everyone spine busters. I would love to come in before or after those are handed out, because oh my.
Just stay away, man. Just stay away from him.
I'm rolling out. I'm a lumberjack at that point.
He can't
I don't
bust your
want the
spine if he can't
smoke.
grab you.
But someone who watched David Young a lot growing up, like it's very cool to see all of the surprises, and it's something that's a bit unpreparable for. But as a wrestler, I like to make myself very unpreparable for. So I think it's going to be a very fun and unique challenge. It's something that I have not had the opportunity to do. I don't think I've ever been in a Rumble style match, period. So
Wow.
It'll be very new and exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking for that. Whatever feels fresh in wrestling, whatever we can kind of trend on and find something new is I feel like that's the only thing worth doing, really.
Yeah.
So I'm very stoked. It's hard to like kind of play the field because anyone's up for grabs and anyone can happen. I hope I don't have to fight any of my friends, but you know.
No, it's all about you. You know, you got to do what you got to do for yourself at the end of the day on that one. The Rumble Jack, I feel is, and I know we've all seen how different things can develop out of one Rumble Jack, and it would be neat to finally have a freaking opening for Darian Bengston to be a permanent fixture with Southern Honor. I mean, that would be pretty amazing. Now, I don't know what kind of stories are going to be coming up out of this Rumble Jack, but you got my vote, man. Let's stamp this one on. Yeah, let's stamp this one down. Let's do this.
Diana
Whatever
approved.
whatever you gotta do it so that you can hang around a lot longer.
Diana
you want me to go back
approved.
to you want me to go back to biting people and stuff? Because that's what I did last show, and I don't know.
I
Here's
don't
the
know
thing,
about
though.
that. That was kind of freaky. I didn't know what was going on.
The fans of this podcast are very aware that Diana loves her bad boys. And so the fact that you were acting the way you acted at the last time you were there isn't, out of the realm of possibility. Diana might be all for that. I don't know, but
I have a whole group. I have a whole bad boy group, and I mean, you're welcome to join.
I appreciate there is some solace and like an air of relief of knowing if I ever have to have a change of heart again, I know someone's going to be in my corner.
I'm there for you, boo. I'm there.
So you ever play like a fantasy baseball or fantasy football or these fantasy leagues? I feel like Diana has her own SHW fantasy league where she's got her own faction, the bad boy faction. So I don't know.
We're getting jackets. I'm telling you, we're getting jackets.
You got your own roster.
Bad boys. That's right.
I don't consider myself a bad boy, but I kind of want a jacket. I mean, what do I got to do here?
I want a jacket.
Bad boy manager. How about that? We just put you as a man. You can bring the community cakes.
Oh, all right.
Keep everybody fed.
He does that well.
I'm in.
That well.
What is it about matching clothing in wrestling that like is cool? Everyone wants to be in like a group with matching clothes. Yeah.
I don't know.
You belong to a group. Yeah, it's a thing.
So I'm curious, before we wrap up, like, what would it mean to you to win the Rumble Jack? What would that mean to you?
Well, it would mean
permanent fixture in Southern Honor.
Well,
vengeful isn't the right word. Vindicating. It would be so vindicating.
Mm-hmm.
So after everything I've had to go through, and I'm not, we can look at the security footage. I am for real in that building, like 15 plus hours a week.
Wow.
To be in those same walls when there are no fans, when there is no one cheering for me, and to be grinding away and working really, really hard at being the best that I can be, and being special and being unique, and to push the culture of things forward. What more romantic storybook written way than to win the Rumble Jack, to win the Southern Honor title, and know that I was there when no one was looking.
Mm-hmm.
I was the champion when no one knew I was, right? Mm-hmm. So vindicating. That could, I don't want to say that could heal parts of me, but hey, I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing.
It is crazy. And I think a lot of fans forget, or I don't know if they forget intentionally, or they just kind of overlook the fact that your crop of talent that came through that pandemic period. I mean, you're starting in 2019, a few months prior to the pandemic really kicking in, and the whole world's shutting down. And fans kind of forget what that's like for people like you that were just starting out. And so it is just a really crazy story, and it really hits a little harder when you hear from somebody like yourself that lived it and is telling their experience. And so it is just kind of a crazy realization. I think a lot of fans like, oh wow, like you never thought about it, and to hear it and to hear the struggles and where you're at now and what you've gone on to do. And I love it for you. I love that you're back in SHW, and I can't wait for the Rumble Jack August 9th. And we're excited that you're going to be part of it. And so any final things before we wrap up? Any messages for the fans before we let you go?
I am very excited to get in there and show people what I'm capable of. There are also so many people there that I'm really interested in getting to work with them and how that would feel. There's already so many talents I admire there. Even the people who aren't on every single show. I'm a big Owen Knight fan. I'm gonna dust him this weekend, but I'm a big Owen Knight fan. Obviously very
We miss
close.
Owen.
By the way, don't be bringing any of the Owen heat to us. Like that was all Darian that said that. Not
Wait,
us.
hold on, because he's one of my bad boys too. So I mean,
That's
it is
true.
what it is.
Boy.
You guys are supposed to
Y'all,
be. Yeah.
y'all can still go at it. I mean, that's I'm good. I'm in the boat.
Are they fighting to be in the bad boy faction? Is this what's
No,
going on?
no, they're both in. They're both in already.
Hilarious.
Yeah, we have, yeah. There's no, yeah. We'll discuss how you get into the bad boys stuff
Oh
I got
boy.
later.
I got you.
Yes,
I got you.
I have
But
some hands with you.
but yeah, I'm a huge fan of Owen's work. Obviously, Carly and Sean are people I'm very close with. Sal is someone whose work I really admire and has been able to, do so many awesome things. But also I'll fight literally anybody. Danny Jordan. I'm
She'll fight
Hey.
anybody too, man.
Hey, you tell her to get ready.
Yeah.
I'm fighting everyone. I don't care.
I'm not
I'm-
telling her nothing. I've been smacked in the face by her multiple times. I've learned my
He has
lesson.
punched you more times than I can count.
Hey, then
True.
this is a you and me thing. On your honor,
Yes!
you have heat with Danny too. I'm ready
Darian's
for
one
it.
of my bad boys now, Diana. How about that?
Yeah, we're getting our own jackets.
Okay. He has completely left my group before he got in good. I'm
That's
hurt.
hilarious.
I am hurt.
Hilarious.
We've gone off the rails. I don't even know how this happened. Anyways, before we let you go, GB, Diana, before we wrap up the show, anything left for the fans here before we go?
No, I'm
Diana?
gonna sulk for a while.
Oh, no.
gosh.
I'm sorry.
No, this is
I see. I still love you.
There it
Talking
is.
about Romeo and Juliet and all this. I know it's deep.
This has been fantastic. I have thoroughly enjoyed today's episode and this interview.
Yes.
It's been amazing, and I definitely hope we get to see more of you, Darian. I'm a big fan of yours, as you well know, and so I look forward to us getting to see more of you in this particular universe. So really exciting. What a story.
Yeah, for real. I know there's more. You know, whole documentary for this one.
Like seriously.
We may have to have you back after you potentially win the Rumble Jack. I'm just saying. I don't know. And
That'd
then
be
we'll have you
amazing.
back on and we'll have a whole nother conversation to have. But
Mhm.
I feel like we could talk to you all night long, but I know you got to go. You got other interviews lined up. You're a popular guy. And
Yes.
so we just want to thank you, Darian Bengston, for joining us here on the SHW podcast, man. It's been a pleasure to have you on with us.
Super thankful for y'all to have had me. It's tons of fun. Super excited to have the championship celebration live here on the podcast. It's going to be
Hey.
so much fun.
I
You
love
heard it here first.
I love it.
Why not?
I love
Let's
it.
do
We
it.
can do it.
Let's do it.
Oh
I
yeah.
will bring the community cake.
Ooh. I guess I'll bring in the Hennessy because it's Hennessy
there it
and
is.
community. Anyways, we'll see.
Oh boy.
We got a little time. We'll figure it all out. We'll make the plans. But
Sounds
All right.
good.
all right, folks. Well, that's going to wrap us up on this week's episode of the podcast. But until we see you next time, this has been
SHW.
This is our wrestling.